The episode begins after the completion of hard work, a work that lasted for a few months, a wonderful achievement. This big house is a really big house. Everyone worked hard to make this house. We are really a wonderful group, the girls said. The expatriates will be happy with this big house. She told me, I am very happy, Hirako, you are the best among us. Without you we do not do anything. Now we will take a tour inside the house. Wow, Hirako said. Its structure from the inside is very similar to the house in which Leah lives. Now we are in the main hall, which was specially designed to be a compound where we all stay up in the summer. The room to your left, dear viewer, is Hirako's room, and on the other side is the dining room, consisting of 6 wooden chairs and a large table. In the back is the kitchen, and at the bottom there is the basement or the main store for storing food and firewood. These are your bedrooms, but what do you think of this closed room with this bolt? Why was it designed like this? What a really big house. This is more than wonderful, Hirako said. Look at this big tree. As for this statue, we made it in the form of a dog of dogs, and they were placed in this way. What do you think about that? I think it is good. Now it was time to prepare lunch. He replied, dish that is difficult to make? Nothing is too difficult for Hirako. Hirako said, I am doing everything, so be quiet now lest I put you in this big pot. Outside they went out to see the cultivated crops. There are many plants that have been cultivated, and many of them do not grow in normal climates, but now, in the progress that you are experiencing, we can do anything. You plant and God grows. We only have to strive. Now let's harvest the spices for the curry food. First the cumin. Hirako says that this flower, after it blooms, leaves a seed behind it. This seed makes the seasoning good, and it is the spice most responsible for the smell of curry, so Ro smells it and finds that its smell is very strange. Hirako told them that the next flower is turmeric, which gives the curry its color, since the part they care about is the root, but the part that grows above the ground is too big, so they dry the part that grows underground and use it. The next flower is dry coriander, where he grinds these seeds into a powder and uses them, and its leaves are called green coriander. Hirako smells it and admires its scent, and the dogs try to smell it, but they find that its smell is strong, so they run and leave him, so Ro and Tia agree to discuss this matter. Hirako then shows them black pepper, hot pepper, and tells them that he will use these spices in food, but he did not find the girls with him in the place, so he went to his house to get food, and Leah helped him in this because Ro and Tia were busy looking for a powerful magic protection spell. Hirako prepares the food, as he first starts to heat the rapeseed oil that they extracted, then he adds the rabbit meat to it, then he grinds all the spices except for the cumin, and then he removes it from the fire so that it does not overcook. As soon as he has some color on the meat and the cumin cooks in the remaining pieces and juices from the meat to bring out the flavor from the aroma, the smell of the curry begins to escalate, and Leah tells him that she has never smelled such a smell before. Hirako answers and says that they will focus on frying the onion, ginger and garlic cubes, then they will add the tomato cubes and continue to fry everything together. After that, he will add the meat and boiled soybeans with some water, then leave it to simmer. After that, Ryuko says that he forgot something important, which is the naan, since this naan is a type of bread that is common with them, and it is the same recipe as regular bread. Hirako thinks that they should bake bread. He tells Leah that they are supposed to cook it inside the stove, but he saw people cook it using the outside part. We see Ro and Tia, after they came from looking for coriander, they find their friends, they watch Hirako preparing food, and they get hungry too, and at night when they finish preparing the food, all the girls sit down to eat, and when Ro and Tia see the food, they try to eat it, and Hirako eats it. The girls taste it, and Tia tells him that these spices gave him a very beautiful flavor, so Hirako rejoices because they like the food. And they go to take more of it to eat it, so they finish the food, and they show joy and pleasure with this food. Tia says, I definitely want to eat it again someday. I have memorized the recipe pretty much. Let's try to change the amount of seasoning we use next time. And Hirako said okay, they all liked it, so I guess that's what is important, but still eating a few pieces of curry makes you really hungry. Hirako says the winter of this world is approaching. As soon as it starts to snow, we will spend most of our days inside the house, and we need to finish our winter preparations before that happens. Zabuton hibernates at the top of the tree and made sure to order extra blankets for the winter early. Leah and the fairies will continue to work on forging and some other projects during the winter, and Ru and Tia are preserving some food for the winter. We season the meat and then smoke it and dry it. Kuro and the dogs won't be able to hunt well during the winter once the snow starts, which is why I want to stock up as much as possible, and I think we will be fine as far as meat goes. and I will work on a way to preserve the vegetables. The vegetables go to the boxes above them, then they are covered in paper, and then they are covered with snow. It is called snow storage. The bottom boxes are empty, and water is collected from any snow that melts to keep the vegetables dry. I will close them as soon as the snow falls. He says I wish I had used magic even though I knew there was no chance it would actually work, and watching them use magic every day made me feel like I needed to try it for some reason. And at night she uses magic and says ignition might be a low-level spell, but you can still use it without studying magic. Hirako says to her, I think you're right, you all make it look so easy, I thought I could do it, and says to Leah, Tia's summoning golems is hard, using the other two magics he said her then means that she is so amazing because she can summon a bunch of them at once? Tia said to her, I can do a lot of things, you know? He told her, of course I know, but nevertheless you are all so wonderful, and I am glad to know that I can count on all of you to help, and all I do is do some gardening and cooking. She tells him to live here for as long as you have this thing no one can do, and Hirako says that winter has arrived and the snow is starting to pile up. I think this should do it. We have been spending more time indoors, so we need things to do for fun. I started with the classic reversey game. You built a chess set and a mahjong set. You play the game with black and white pieces. You flip them to your color and the game ends when the board is completely filled. Whoever has the most pieces wins, and Ru says it's a simple game. Is it really fun to play? Tia says how short-sighted it is because the simple design allows for seat strategies in this game. Hirako said it's amazing that you to a game now, Tia. Hirako, let's try to relax and have some fun. They start playing and Hirako says that the white team won. Ru regrets it and says, since we don't know exactly where the pieces were, we need to start over, so we find Tia using her magic and lifting all the pieces, so Ru gets upset about that, and then they play with each other and Tia helps Koro. And Hirako is very surprised because the dog understands the rules, and after that he tries to play Koro with another dog, and he finds that they understand the game well and he feels a great energy from them. And Ru enters and challenges one of their dogs to play, and Hirako tells her, I don't think that's a good idea. But she did not have the courage to press the reset button while playing against Koro, and we find that Hirako thinks that this animal can understand this game, and in the end he also loses from this dog and joins Ru, and admits that Koro is number one in the game. He says I thought that playing only board games all day would not be good for our health, so I built a small bowling group too, and Hirako plays and throws a bowling ball and wins 8 points, and tries again and knocks the rest. And Ru plays and drops it all at once, and everyone is very happy. And so they spent the winter together in joy and happiness and playing games, but these days passed quickly. Then the snow melted and we entered the spring season and the weather became nice and wonderful. We find Hirako telling the girls, I want to finish planting the crops as soon as possible, I think it's time for Zabuton to wake up from her slumber. Suddenly, they hear the voice of someone issuing a sound to warn them of danger, and they find that a big monster is heading towards them. What a big monster! Is Hua a dragon? We'll know in the next episode, so follow us.
私たちも設計手伝ったのよ。大きな柱も必要です。
俺たちの新しい家が完成した。
立派でなくては。
ああ。
どんどん
分かってはいたが。ここが地下室か。
不動です。
ほほー。それぞれ新しい家の神様に続いて。ふむ。
へえ、聞いたことない。
挑戦しようと思ってな。場合はこの辺りかな。
見たことないわね。
葉っぱの部分は炒める。させるのはルーダ氏に頼んだ。ちなみに乾燥さ、いわゆるウコンだが、乾燥した実を粉にして使う。
インフェル系を見つけたとか。
その間にクミン以外、
はい。
肉の旨味が残っている鍋でクミンを炒め。
肉 このくらいでしょうか。
鍋に菜種から取った油を一旦取り出して、
です。
次はみじん切りした鶏を引き出す。焦げないよう注意だ。ペースト状になったら頃合いだ。このまま肉が柔らかくなれて忘れていた。米をなんだろう。カレーに気を取られて忘れ。
なんだか食欲の枠がなさそうでしたが。
本当は釜で焼くらしいけど、
何かしらあれ。
うまくできてると思うぞ。
これは
もう残しておいてもらえると。
感じがやみつきになりそうです。
きっとカレーだ。スパイスの多分うまくできてると思うぞ。
きっとスパイス
異世界
の
木の上で冬眠してしまうので、リアたちは冬の間前もって冬用の布団を頼んでおいた。よしとアジや小物作りを続けてくれるようだ。なのでこちらは野菜のっている。シートをかけて。
燃やしちゃダメですよ。
ほ
発火は初歩の魔法だけど。
なあみんなは頼もしい限り何体も出すのってすごいんじゃないか。
法の中でも難しい部類よ。そうよ。
雪が積もり始めた。で相手を挟むと自分の色になる。見ただけでわかるなんてすごいな。手を挟むと自分の色になる。まあ気楽に。
手が滑る。いましたからね。ええ。
説明を聞いただけでわかるなんて。まあ気楽に行こう。
手が滑る。手がどこにあったかわからないから
恥ずかしいですよ。
わからないからやり直しね。私たちには負けてられないわ。
ルーが気迫を感じる。
すごいです、クロさん。
負けてられないわ。
ルーやめといて。事件が気迫を感じる。
さあ勝負よ勝負。
さすがに黒
ですけど。
ダブルリーチ。しきれないだろう。
これですか。
13年待ち。
これ役。
ミニボーリングも作った。
は私よ。
そのシンプルさがこう聞かれたので、悪人をしていると。
されますか。
そうだな。だいぶ暖かくなってきたな。音の回数から。
嘘でしょ。嘘でしょ。
The anime ignites with a dire warning from Zabuton. Taps, Hiraku, Ru, and Tia spring into action, charging towards the sky where an intruder lurks. Their hearts race as they catch sight of a monstrous, red wyvern soaring overhead, its massive wings creating a deafening flapping sound. The creature lets out a blood-curdling roar, echoing through the forest. Hiraku is stunned, never imagining he'd face a beast like this. He holds his breath, hoping beyond hope that the wyvern will simply fly past them and disappear. Unfortunately, the wyvern instantly compresses mana in its mouth and prepares itself to breathe fire. Lu and Tia quickly act and put a strong barrier over the farm. The wyvern's breath attack coming at them was blocked, but small fires rain down and start burning the farm. The elves rapidly jump into action to put out the fire. Lu and Tia are considering if they should attack the wyvern, but Lu isn't sure if they can even pierce the wyvern's barriers. Hiraku is worriedly looking around thinking about what they should do with the elves. Putting out fires in the wyvern flying over them, he wonders if they should try to escape into the forest, but the wyvern can just follow them from the sky. He realizes that his only choice is to drive the wyvern away, but how? While thinking that he has to protect everyone, the magic omnipotent farming tool suddenly materializes in his hand, in the shape of a spear. He starts wondering how that ever happened, but he has no time to think about it. He just decides to take the power and fully use it with that. He powerfully throws the spear at the flying wyvern. The spear flew straight and true toward the wyvern, but the wyvern creates a 3-layered barrier to protect itself. The spear and the barrier clash in a brilliant show of power, but the spear manages to break through the 3 barriers and hit the wyvern at its wing, burning it away back in the ground. Ru and Tia cannot believe what happened. The tool turns to Hiraku's hand and he repeats the process. He again changes it into a spear and throws it at the wyvern. The spear goes straight through its chest, and the wyvern falls down to the forest below while walking to the wyvern's crash site. Ria reports to Hiraku that they managed to put out the fires. There was some damage to the crop fields, but all of the buildings were fine. Meanwhile, they finally reached the dead wyvern's corpse. He asked the others if there are more of those creatures, and Lu explains that there are, but running into one as large as the one that attacked them is a very rare occurrence. Hiraku wonders if someone might have sent the wyvern to specifically attack them, but Tia points out that if someone does manage to command a wyvern, they wouldn't send such a rare and valuable creature off on its own. So the wyvern most probably is just a wild one. As his last question, Hiraku asks the girls if they can eat the wyvern. That afternoon Hiraku cooks the wyvern meat into different delicacies. He was able to create a wyvern round steak grilled with spices. As for the breast meat, he wrapped it in leaves and steamed it. The tail meat, meanwhile, was simmered into a stew with various vegetables. Everyone starts eating and they all find the food very delicious. While eating, Lu curiously asks Tia if she can block an attack from the spear like the one Hiraku used earlier, and Tia answered that she absolutely couldn't. The attack was powerful enough to pierce through a 3-layered barrier and blow a hole through a wyvern's chest. The 2 girls realized that they were very lucky that Kuro and the dogs were the only ones that they ran into first. When they came here, not Hiraku and his spear. Hiraku notices the 2 girls talking and asks them if they found a bone or something, and the girls immediately change the topic. At that same moment, in the demonic kingdom of Galgaradu inside the demon lord's castle, 3 individuals are having a meeting. They are 3 of the demon lords, 4 great generals, Bezel, Rendon, and Gratz. They cannot believe the report they have just received of a wyvern being killed. A Y diver in drawing near would have immediately required them to mobilize their entire military force, but someone managed to kill it with just 2 hits. They instantly realized they cannot fight someone like that. Besso reminds them as generals, they have to handle the situation before fear and panic spreads among their citizens. Brandon immediately suggests an idea: they should resign elsewhere in the gatekeeper dragons. The dragon drive is talking with a human Gucci. They have just witnessed the fight between the human and the dragon, and Drame asks Gucci what would happen if he received such an attack from the spear. Gucci honestly tells him that it would have cleanly speared through him. He then tells the dragon that it would be foolish for them to attack, and Him agrees. The next day, Hiraku is quietly staring at his vineyard. The wyvern meat was every bit as delicious as it was said to be, but he felt like there was still one thing missing from the meal. The girls then arrive and Hiraku tells them that it's time for them to create alcohol. If they are going to make alcohol out of grapes, then it's going to be wine. Wine already existed in this world, so everyone was excited about making it. The elves quickly harvested all the grapes in the vineyard and gather them in large baskets. Now all that's left is to squish them and let them ferment. To do that, Hiraku makes a contraption where they put all the grapes and the girls can crush it with their feet. The girls are hesitant to stomp on something that they're going to drink, but Hiraku encourages them from below the machine where he is waiting to gather the juices. He had prepared barrels with the high elf Lalash's help, making the containers. Slips and falls down on Ria, covering them both in juices. After getting up, Tia suggests that they could probably stomp easier if they have a way to be in rhythm. That way, all their moves together, they all sing the song together, and the 2 girls stomping.
2、3、か。リラメ、ロミンベ。
The grapes follow the beat of the songs thanks to their new rhythm. They are able to stomp and sink around the thing, and juice continuously flows out to the barrels. Tia invites Lu to join them, and Lu happily drags Hiraku along. By late afternoon, They were able to finish crushing all the grapes and collect their juices. Now the yeast on the skin of the grape should ferment them. Hiraku wonders if they made too much since they were able to collect 16 barrels of juices, but Lu points out that they are surely just going to drink it all anyway. Meanwhile, God is kneeling in front of the goddess of agriculture and is asking for forgiveness. After all, they have just watched Hiraku happily living his life. However, the goddess reminds God that he mistakenly punished an innocent human soul. Sneakily tried to save him and ended up sending him to the forest of death. On top of that, he gave the human a replica of the Holy Land's grime. God tries to make excuses and tells the goddess that the human is only using the replica as a farming tool. The goddess points out that the replica should have drained the Hiraku of his life force, but God explains that he also gave Hiraku super fast recovery abilities, meaning that he recovers everything the replica sucks out. Lastly, the goddess shakes in anger, since her statue turned out to be an old man. As punishment, she makes his father the god to sit on his knees for 300 years back on the farm. Zabuton's warning bell rings again and Hiraku checks it out. Armed with his spear, to his surprise, it was a strange little girl, wrapped up in Zabuton's webs. Lu notices the girl and realizes that it's her little sister Flora. A little while later, Flora is now dressed and explaining why she was in the forest after she heard that Lu was being chased by the angel Tia. She followed her all the way there. Since she's already there, Hiraku invites her to stay with them for a while. Laura accepts his offer, but she can't believe Hiraku is her sister's husband. Lu explains that Hiraku is actually the one in charge, the master of the Inferno Wolves, and he even took down a wyvern. Flora finally understands her sister and she prostrates herself in front of Hiraku as an apology. Meanwhile, this is the first time Hiraku learns that Koro and his ilk are actually Inferno Wolves. Kordo demonstrates the Inferno in their names by blowing fire out of his mouth afterward. They feed Flora the various delicacies they have cooked at the farm. She immediately takes a liking to tofu, the soft white stuff made from soybeans. Hiraku then proceeds to explain that he actually wants to cook miso and soy sauce, which are also both made from fermented soybeans. It seems that in this world, fermented foods like wine and cheese exist. However, people aren't aware of the microorganisms that cause the fermentation. Flora immediately starts taking down notes after hearing Hiraka's explanation. Hidoko recognizes that just like Lu, Flora seems to be very passionate about her research. After staying for a few days, Flora leaves stating that she'll bring the wonders of miso and soy sauce to the world after 1 month. She finally returns with an army of maids and some animals, and the representatives of the maids introduces herself and asks Hiraku for some work. Meanwhile, Hiraku appreciates the cows Flora brought along since they can now make butter and cheese. Meanwhile, Tia, who is watching the proceeding, suddenly realizes that everyone seems to be in a group. The vampires now have a lot of maids. There are also a lot of elves. The wolves have a pack, and even the spiders aren't alone. Meanwhile, she's all by herself. Tia instantly tells Hiraku that she'll be gone for a few days and flies away when she returns. She now has her underlings with her. There are 3 angels: Grand Maria, Kudal and Corone, as well as a group of lizardmen with Daga as their leader. She also brought some chickens so they can have eggs. The maids quickly take over the chores on the farm. Hiraku notices that they were just eating simple dishes like boiled potatoes, so he teaches them different strong thanks to their race being ogres and also quick learners, being able to serve him food after teaching them how to cook. As for the angels, Tia orders them to be the guards around the forest, so that incidents like the wyvern showing up won't easily happen again. The lizard men become the ones in charge of all the laborious work. Outdoors, meanwhile, Ria had gathered all the remaining elves in the forest and brought them there to help. Hiraku asks why she just brought girl elves, but Ria explains that the men weren't able to survive. Nevertheless, they plan to start rebuilding their population. Hiraku cheers them on and decides not to ask how they plan to do it. A few days later, Hiraku gathers the representatives of everyone for a meeting. He wants to come up with a name for their place. Before it was just his hut and some fields, but now they are almost like a village. Lu suggests that they should name it after the founder, but Hiraku doesn't really like the names Hiraku Village or Machio Town the maid, and suggests naming it after the forest. But Hiraku doesn't exactly know the name of the forest. After learning that it's called the Forest of Death, he also immediately rejects the name Village of Death. The spider Zabuton then raises her head and points at the door, prompting Hirako to open it. Upon opening the door, Hiraka gazes at the giant tree outside. With it, he decides to name the place the Great Tree Village. That night, in front of a great bonfire, Hirako announces their new name, and in celebration they are holding a party. It would also be the debut of their new drink, the first batch of wine made in the Great Tree Village. Everyone starts chanting Mayor at Hirako, and he reminds them that that's something they need to decide later together. The chants, however, didn't stop, and Lu and Tia also voiced their support for him, left with no choice. Hirako accepts the position and happily cheers with them. The party then commences with everyone eating, drinking, and dancing together. Later, a drunk Tia notices Hirako quietly watching them and invites him to sit beside her. She asks him if he's okay, and he just admits that he's so happy that everything feels like a dream. The two toast their new village, and Hirako watches everyone in celebration.